Okay, so let's take a look at like what has Judaism contributed to the world that the world does not yet fully appreciate or give credit. Of course, we introduced the idea of monotheism. Yes, we taught the world to believe in one God, beginning with Avraham. But that was 4,000 years ago. What else have we contributed? There are so many blessings that Judaism has brought to the world. Many people don't realize that it's coming from Judaism, and many people don't fully appreciate the gift or the blessing of it. But that life is sacred. Where does that notion come from? In some way, that's even a bigger contribution than the belief in one God. The early idolaters, by the way, just a little historic note, the early idolaters were not unaware of God, the creator of the universe. They knew this. There was never a time when people didn't know that there was a creator. The problem with early year idolaters is that they made a mistake concerning God's investment in his creation. So even the early idolaters did not believe that the sun created the world or the moon created the world. On the contrary, they were fully aware that the sun itself was created and the moon was created, and all the gods that they worshipped were all created. They knew this. It wasn't even a matter of belief. But what they did believe is that God is very busy. He's got many things to do. And after creating our universe, he went off to do other things and left our universe under the control of his ministers, the sun, the moon, gravity, whatever. And they therefore felt that when they have a need, there's no point in turning to God, who is now preoccupied with other things. If you need something and you want your need provided, talk to the powers that control it. So if you need your crop to grow and be healthy, then you pray to the sun. If you need a little romance in your life, then you pray to the moon. You go to the source of things. Their mistake, of course, is that they attributed some amount of independence and free will to the sun and to the moon. It's true, the sun makes things grow. But it's not true that the sun can decide one day that he's not going to do it. So the sun makes things grow, but not by choice, not voluntarily. So the Gemara has an interesting example for it. When you're sitting in a restaurant and the waiter brings you wine, you thank him, knowing that the wine is not his. It's not that he's giving you his wine. And yet you thank him because he delivered the wine. He served it. But if it's not his wine, what are you thanking him for? Why does he deserve thanks? He deserves thanks because he had the option not to bring it to the table. So since he is a willing server, you thank him for his willingness. But that's a human being. If somebody trained a cat to serve the food, you would not thank the cat. Because trained as it is, it has no freedom of choice. Same is true with parents. Parents give birth to a child. Of course, God provides the soul, and God provides the health, and God provides the miracle of birth. So why are you thanking your parents? Why do you owe them gratitude? Because they could have decided they don't want to bring children into the world. So for their willingness, they deserve credit. So that was the mistake of the idolaters. They believed that the sun, the moon, the fertility god, the thunder god, whatever, had some free choice. And if they get into a bad mood, they won't provide the service that they're supposed to provide. And that's a terrible mistake. So, knowing that God is the creator of all, which has always been known, even in the times of the idolaters, we gain something very, very precious. That God is personally involved in the birth of a child. It's not the stork. It's not the laws of nature. It's not the fertility god. It's God himself. Isn't that what gives life its sanctity? What makes life sacred? Where did we get this respect for life? In fact, where did we get this grief that comes from death? Imagine that we didn't think life was sacred and that we didn't grieve when people died. What kind of a world would we have? Just from that alone. What a change that brought to the world. Why is human sacrifice forbidden? Why did God go through that whole spiel with Avraham? Sacrifice your son. No, don't sacrifice your son. What was that all about? At that time in the world, and the world was pretty sophisticated by then, sacrificing your child seemed like a perfectly normal and virtuous thing to do. That's how bad the world would be without Judaism. Judaism introduced the sanctity of life. Now, other religions that thought that they could improve on Judaism actually caused a lot of damage. In this area, sanctity of life, Christianity did not add to the sanctity of life. On the contrary, you're born in sin, your life is stained, your life is unholy, your life needs to be redeemed, saved. Not exactly sacred. What did that lead to? Well, if a person doesn't really believe in this, in their religion and in their teachings, then killing him is probably a good thing. Because life is not sacred. Their belief is sacred. God is sacred, but not life. So without Judaism, life would really be pretty cheap. On every occasion, with every mistake, with every misstep, your life is forfeit. What does Judaism say? Judaism says that life is precious to God. That's what it tells us. God created Adam and said it is very good. And when Cain killed Abel, God was very upset. You see, there was no commandment that said life is sacred. God modeled the sanctity of life from his perspective. He finds life sacred. Now, when we try to imitate God, which is what Judaism is all about, the first thing we imitate is the sanctity of life. In other words, God says, to me, for some mysterious divine reasons, life on earth is sacred. Now, you try to have that same attitude and cultivate that same feeling in yourself so that you'll see what I see. You'll be more like me. So where does the sanctity of life come from? From God, because he sees it first, and then we try to imitate it. And how do we know anything about God's view of life? From the Torah. It tells us something really fundamental. It's not like we find our life precious and God keeps killing people as if we are disposable. And so we have to fight with God, beg God, convince God that he shouldn't be so frivolous with our lives because our lives are precious. Our lives matter. That is a very depressing, morbid picture of reality. My life matters to me. I got to convince God that it should matter to him. So maybe if I behave myself, maybe if I pray to him a lot, maybe if I sacrifice my firstborn, maybe he'll take me seriously. That is a very, very disturbing picture. It can't possibly be true. We have the opposite picture. Your life matters to God. Now try to make it matter to you too. Because if it matters to him, there must be something precious there. See if you can find what is precious about your life and about everybody's life, about life itself. That, besides being a more Jewish concept, it's a much healthier concept. Intuitively, it feels better. It feels right. We don't have to convince the Creator who created life that my life matters. And if I do have to convince him, I'm in big trouble. The whole thing is upside down. It makes no sense. And yet, in many ways, that's what religion seems to be saying. God doesn't find you important. You don't matter to him unless you do something to get his attention. That's disturbing and disturbed. So let's examine for a moment. What does it mean life matters? What does that mean? Matters for what? For whom? To whom? And if you have to convince people that life matters, what are people thinking? If this is a discussion, if this is a debate, if this is something that needs to be resolved, we're in bad shape. So we used to speak about the sanctity of life. Now we're saying life matters. What does that mean? What does it mean? Life matters to whom? Life matters for what? Why does life matter? Any life. You can't just come along and throw out a slogan and all of a sudden create a reality. All people are equal. Beautiful. It's not working, and it's not going to work because it's not true. The important thing about Torah's values is that they're all true, not poetic. They can be poetic also, but only if they're true. So all of these slogans, we have to really be careful. Sometimes what sounds good actually undermines what we're trying to accomplish. Somehow, by saying life matters, you've stripped it of its sanctity. You've made it negotiable. When you say life is sacred, it's not negotiable. For the very simple reason, because nobody knows what sacred means. How can you debate the issue? Imagine somebody comes along, life is sacred? No, I don't think so. What, do you know what sacred means? Sacred means it's out of reach. You can't go there. That's what it means. So life is beyond you. Even your own life is beyond you. You can't go there. You can't make decisions about life, not even your life, which is why suicide is forbidden. It's not your life to end, just like it wasn't your life to begin. So life is sacred means you have no say. It's way beyond you. You're out of your league, you're out of your depth. But when you say life matters, you've reduced it. Now it's negotiable. Life matters? To whom? For what? Especially when you start identifying particular lives. These lives matter, those lives matter. Why are you making it negotiable? Why are you making it a topic for conversation and debate? It's not debatable. So a major contribution of Judaism is that Judaism introduced the idea that life is sacred. Let's understand that a little better. God created us with a mind of our own, with a will of our own, and with the freedom to choose, to respond to him or not to respond to him, to obey him or disobey him. God also gave us independence in the sense of ownership. Every person is the owner of his own property. So the commandment, thou shalt not steal, is basically saying people own what they have. It's yours. When God asks you to give charity, he's asking you to give what is yours. That's another contribution from Judaism. That even God will not take away your property without justification, because he made it yours. You have ownership. In many ways, God will defend your ownership by making stealing a sin. And all sorts of stealing, cheating, kidnapping. You can't do this because there is such a thing as ownership. One thing that God never allows us to own is life. God gives us life, but he never gave us ownership. You are not in possession of your life. You live it, you experience it, you enjoy it, you suffer from it. It is never yours. I don't know if you can say it's on loan from God, and you got to give it back in good shape. That's what we call sacred. Sacred means you cannot own it. It's not like property, which God really makes yours. But with life, when he gives life, he never lets go. You talk about a gift with strings attached. These are not strings, these are cords, chains. He gives you life and never lets go, never takes his hand off. So it remains his. Maybe that's what we mean, that there are three partners in the birth of a child. The father and the mother contribute the human stuff, the body stuff. God contributes the soul. But he never lets go of the soul. So he's like, puts a soul into the body, but never takes his hand off that soul. Never releases it from his grasp. That's what makes it sacred. So what is sacred in this world? God's name. Don't take God's name in vain. Life. God never gave that away. And intimacy. The ability to procreate. The ability to create a masterpiece, God gave away. It's as if God says, I can create masterpieces, and I'm giving you the ability to create masterpieces. If you're a great artist, a great writer, a great architect, you can create masterpieces. But I will not allow you to create life without me. Because procreation cannot be owned. He never lets it out of his grasp. And that's why there are so many laws about intimacy and modesty and marriage. So if we take a look at the commandments, we won't go through all 10. Thou shalt not murder. What does that say? That says that God never relinquished life into our choice, into our preference. We cannot kill when we're in the mood or when we're convinced that we should. Can't. Why? God never let go of life. Don't steal. What does that tell us? God gave property away to people. People really are the owners of their property. And even a government may not, under normal circumstances, walk away with your property. The strong may not rob the poor. So what does the commandment tell us? That property is not sacred. God lets it go. It becomes yours. To some degree, even God justifies asking you to give away your money, or when he confiscates your money. He has to justify it by his own laws, by his own standards. Then God says, don't commit adultery. What does that tell you? That tells you that God never relinquished intimacy. That's not something you can own. So if you do it the way he instructs through marriage and sensitivity and intimacy and monogamy, then you can experience this thing, this divine thing called intimacy or procreation. But if not, then you have no right to it. God never gave it away for you to rearrange, to reconstruct, to take liberties with. So those are some of the contributions that Judaism has made beyond monotheism. So do lives matter? Do lives matter? There are 7 billion people in the world. A few billion, why would it matter? If we're going to be purely analytical about it. In fact, what would be the tragedy if there was only 1 billion? That's not enough. 1 billion people on planet Earth? It'd be very nice, manageable. Why does life matter? There are actually people who believe very deeply that human beings mess up nature. Nature is perfect until the human being comes along and destroys everything in his path. So nature or the universe, Earth, would be better off without human beings. They really believe that. Lives matter. Animal lives matter. Vegetable life matters, not human lives. We are the lowest form of life. Mess up everything. So we're talking some pretty fundamental stuff here. What does the Torah say about life? The Torah says that without the human being, there would be no justification for nature, for creation, for planet Earth, for vegetable, for animal life, for anything. There would be no need and no justification for any of it, and it would not have been created. It was created only for the human being. That's what the Bible says. Very different view of the human being, of lives mattering. So Life doesn't just matter. That's such an understatement. It cheapens life. You got to be really careful with that slogan. It's well-intentioned, but it doesn't serve the purpose. To the animal, life matters. Now that makes sense. Since the animal would not exist were it not for human life, then to the animal, human life matters, because without human life, they would never have been created. I'm not sure what value that has, that to the animal, human life matters. But at least that would make sense. To the human being, it's got to be much more than matters. Because that is too debatable, open for opinion and negotiation. In fact, most of the evil we've known in history was based on the fact that life matters. My life, not your life. So if I'm convinced that my life matters, then I can also be convinced that yours doesn't. See, it's negotiable. Even Hitler's plan. What was he saying? He was saying life matters. So you need to get rid of the sick, the cripple, the weak. You gotta thin the herd, because life matters. You got to be able to do what you need to do to make life better, and stop with all these commandments that restrict you, that handicap you, and prevent you from doing what you need to do to make life matter. The whole theory of Darwinian evolution, survival of the fittest, that kind of fits with life matters. Life matters if you're trying to survive. But why do you need to survive? It doesn't get to the heart of what life is. So what exactly is life? In simple language, Torah says, when God created the human being, he wasn't creating just another element or another kingdom in his masterpiece. He was creating a partner. We are partners with God in creation. Now, come on. That is very different from the rest of creation. The rest of creation can be called creations. That's all they are. They're creations. Made by God, made by his hand, and they are what he makes them to be. The human being is his partner in creation. That is radically different. So the animal, the most intelligent, the clever animal, is a creation, not God's partner in creation. And the human being, the lowest and the least intelligent human being, is God's partner in creation. So the notion that human life and animal life are equal, and sometimes animal life should take precedence over human life, That is so un-Jewish, unreasonable. If we are God's partner in creation, our lives should not even be described with the same term. Plant life, animal life, human life. Completely misleading. To the degree that we are God's partner in creation, to that degree we are creators, not the creation. So of course that doesn't make us God, but certainly can't be equated with vegetable life or animal life. Animal life and vegetable life are part of our responsibility as partners in creation with God. Nobody gave the animal responsibility for the human. So human life matters? Dangerously understated. We carry responsibility for the universe. And what is the responsibility? Not just to clean up the oceans. Our responsibility is to make this creation meaningful. It's like the difference between a house and a home. Without the human being, the world would be a masterful creation, like a beautiful house. But it would have no soul. It would not be a home. It would not be a place that nurtures life. It would be a place that consumes life. And you see animals eating each other. By the way, it's really interesting. In the description of creation, God says that plant life exists to feed animal life. God created grass and vegetation to feed the animal life. It doesn't say anywhere that one animal eats another. So although that is a fact, animals are carnivores. Is that the right word? Animals do eat animals, but it's not built into nature because it's not described that way in creation. And therefore, after Mashiach comes, animals won't eat animals. And that will not be a change in nature. It'll be a change in habit. Interesting. So, were it not for the Torah telling us where we fit in creation, we would have no idea. Now we know that without the human being, the world is a beautiful creation, but it is not a home. It's just a house. With the human being, the earth becomes a home, with all that that means. The only problem is that it's up to us. We have the freedom of choice. We can either melt into the woodwork and just be part of what exists. We can become the furniture in the house, or we can turn it into a home. That's our role. We're not here to survive. We're here as a partner with God to do the one step or the one part that he cannot do. And that is turn it into a home. It's like a man can build a house, a beautiful house, great house. He can't make it into a home, not without his wife. So that leads us to one final conclusion. What does it mean it's not good for man to exist alone? Why not? Why not? What's wrong with being a Robinson Crusoe? You have your own island, you're self-sufficient, you take care of everything yourself. Why is that not perfect, utopian? Not good to be alone? Well, yeah, if you're a schlemazel. If you can't open a jar, yeah, you better find somebody. But if you can take care of yourself just fine, what could be better than being alone? Now we know that it is not. From from the movies, from the books, we know being alone can be horrible. But why is that? Why is that? That's strange. What is it in the human spirit that makes being alone so unbearable? This is what God meant when he said it is not good for man to be alone. But listen to the words. It's not good. Good is a moral description. Good and bad is the definition of morality. So it is not good for man to be alone means there's no moral goodness. So it's not a practical problem. It's difficult for man to be alone, or even impossible for man to be alone. Well, because he can't cook, because he can't have children by himself. That's not what it says. It says it's not good. Goodness would be lacking if only man existed, or only women. Because everybody needs a partner in creation. So it is a godly thing. It's a divine attribute that we don't want to be alone. That life is absolutely essential. My life is essential to God, and your life is essential to me. Because by myself, I can't fix the world. I am here to be God's partner in creation. Well, how much can I contribute? I am a tiny partner. So God needs every human being to participate in this partnership. Life matters. Life is divine, meaning necessary for divine purpose. That's pretty impressive. That means that your life is significant forever. It's infinite in its consequence. Judaism teaches that if you save one life, it's like you saved the whole world. If you kill one life, it's like you killed the whole world. Is that a little too dramatic? A little hype? If you kill one person, you have killed the world, because the only way the world can be what it's meant to be is if all the partners participate. So you've destroyed God's vast eternal plan by taking one life out of the picture, because that one life is a partner in creation. So yes, God can replace it. God can even send that very same soul back again. But what you did destroyed the whole world. It's not an exaggeration or a poetic sentiment. So if we could see ourselves as partners in God's creation, I think many of our problems would disappear, our social problems. It's not enough that we live with tolerance, acceptance, even equality. That is so undermining the sanctity of life. We are all equal. Yeah, is that what makes us precious? Is that why murder is so wrong, because we're all equal? Is murder wrong because we all matter? It's dangerous. The only way to describe life is with the word sacred. We are on a sacred mission. We are partners with God. If you don't do your share, my world will never be complete, because I can't complete it by myself. But worse than that, if you don't do your share, God's world will never be complete. And then you're careless with a life? So let's say, for example, a black life is taken. We owe an apology to the black community? Is that who we've hurt? Or do we owe an apology to God himself? Because he was hurt. If we recognize that we owe an apology to God, these things wouldn't happen in the first place. So let's get to the heart of the issue. If life is not precious to God, then life is not precious. You can't get away from that. That life is precious to you? Okay, that's your opinion. What makes the other person's opinion any less valid? And he thinks life is not precious. He thinks 7 billion people on this planet is way too many. Thin the herd. Is he not as right as your belief that life matters? So if it's an opinion, even if it were taken up for a vote, we would be in big trouble. There's no voting and there's no opinion. Life is sacred to God. If we want to be right and good, we should cultivate that same awareness. Think of life the way God thinks of life. It'll make society much better. It'll also make your soul a lot healthier, because the closer you resemble God, the better you are. So I think the message to the world has to be, stop bickering about life. You're cheapening it. give life back to God. He never surrendered it. It's his, only his. You've got to treat it that way. And that, I guess, is the good news. That what's happening forces us to rethink the fundamentals of life. And if we had those fundamentals, maybe we wouldn't need a police force. At least not to prevent crime. Crime should not be an inevitable, unavoidable fact of life. Shouldn't. But the only way to get rid of crime is to raise people who want to get rid of crime. And the only way to do that is to teach people about God and our role in his creation and our partnership with him. If we don't know that, then we know nothing. Then life is debatable, disposable, and with justification. The earth is not big enough for 7 billion people, so kill off a few billion. Is that asking too much? We need children raised with an awareness, not only that there is a God, but that God is very much involved, because he never let go. He never let our lives out of his grasp. So I'm sure somebody is thinking, well, then why does he let us kill each other? If he never let go of my life, why is my life in danger? What it means that God never let go of life, it means that if life is lost, it's his loss. If you lose money, that's your loss. But if you lose life, it's his loss. He is intimately involved. He is intimately vulnerable in those things that matter to him. So yes, you can kill somebody. One person can end another person's life. But who is damaged by that? God himself. Despite the fact that life is never really lost, because when you die, you go back to where you came from, which is heaven. So your life will continue to exist, only not in your body. And that disturbs God terribly, because that's what murder means. Murder doesn't mean don't kill a soul. It means kill the connection between the soul and the body. So God is deeply invested in having the soul remain in the body as his partner in creation. The soul in heaven is not a partner in creation. If you want to get a little deeper, we're not just God's partners in creation, we are the apple of his eye. We are his children. All of that means to say, God never let go. He is deeply, deeply invested. Take God out of the picture, and life becomes negotiable. And there were those who will claim that life does matter, but then there will be those who claim that it doesn't. And who's to say who's right? So bring God back into the world. Going to heaven doesn't solve anything. That's when you stop being God's partner in creation. So rather than try to get to heaven, we should bring God down to earth. Bring God down to earth means value life the way God does. Treat life the way God does. Now God is down to earth, affecting our behavior. And ultimately, and very soon, the world will become God's world in the full sense of the word. It'll be exactly the world He wants it to be. And we will have been partners. We will be able to claim a little credit. That's the good news.